Anyway, so we spoke about the organizations then. We spoke about the ways of negotiations and we discussed the coalitions. Now, the issue of organizations and the way they're organized. So what are the two ways organizations are organized? Why? Sorry. In Serbian, you don't say it. You wouldn't say it that way. So I'm gonna switch into English. Don't worry. Sorry.
No, I like it. I could never think about that.
So structurally, looking at it, you have like, okay, cool. The states, the organizations basically speak, hierarchy, like strong hierarchy, like top down, and you have the horizontal, right? So, and we said that in most of these cases, people do organize in a horizontal way. So why is that? What are the pros and cons?
Well, you were talking before about it. A pro is that you can go from group to group and kind of let them all be creative and encourage them to go in a certain way, but then they all feel like they are actually a solid part of the movement, and they're not really necessarily getting too much instruction from someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What happens with leadership?
It can be decapitated.
Okay, so you want to protect it.
Yeah, so you don't have one person running the show.
So how do you do
Get
that?
rid of that person in the
How do you do that?
You need to spread you need to spread the leadership, but not too much. You don't want to have it totally flat. But in an organization that has experience or has a significant resistance, you don't want it to look like that.
So what makes leader a leader? Cool. That's once we sit over here, we would actually measure who's the leader by knowing him or her, dealing with him or her, for a while, seeing who's the most authoritative, has smart ideas, good plan. What's the perception of the leader from the broader audience? Like once you have broad audience, really, that's kind of looking at you. How do you see the leader? By speaking, right? The person who speaks is the leader. So what do you think the perception is on the side of the police? Who speaks is the leader. So what do you do with, how do you then fix the organization? Get the one who speaks.
Yeah, the solution would be a spokesman who's not necessarily a leader, or have lots of spokesmen who are not necessarily abusive.
Cool. So that would mean that you need to make kind of production of the leaders or the spokespersons, spokespeople, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you find them? What should be the characteristics of those? Presumably the leaders that speak for, 2 weeks and then you just replace them with a new one.
Powerful.
Cool.
Well, I wouldn't say you replace them with new. If they need replacing, if they're arrested, detained.
How do you think they're gonna last? I mean, would you rather just, you could probably, I guess, just let them speak until they get arrested, or you should just preempt that by saying, like, look, now you've been there too much, why don't you just step aside a bit, and when we have the new one who's gonna take the risk for a while.
But don't people need to sort of start to identify, you build a relationship with the person who's speaking to you. So if you're switching them out every couple of weeks, isn't it a little bit difficult to build a relationship for you to connect with your audience? Because you make the best connections over time.
Okay, look, so I have a company back home.
Yeah.
I told you about it, okay? So, and then I got the investors, and my investors are kind of institutional.
Yeah.
And like European Bank for Reconstruction and these kind of people. So they told me, look, Slobo, we kind of liked your company. It's cool what you did. But you know what? Now we're putting serious money down. We need to have serious management. And you and your friends, you're kind of great guys, but why don't we just put the management in place that's kind of, checked by the standards, by the books? And I'm like, okay, fine. And so the first time the management comes in, they send email to all of my employees saying, like, from now on, no one is allowed to make any statements to the press apart from Slobo and me myself. and I'm stunned. I mean, is it okay to act like that? Is it really like normal, the way that companies do?
Well, yeah, it is normal.
But
I
it's
don't know if you're a
disempowering.
public, I'm guessing you're not a public company.
We are not.
Certainly with public companies, very important. You got to manage the message. You can't just have anyone, especially with a bigger organization, talking to the media.
You know what? I have problems with that, fundamental problems, and here are some. First of all, I think the messenger is extremely important, right? So that the one who speaks actually needs to be very, very good person with the skills. The second point, I just told you, the message is important. The messenger is even more important. Then the third rule is, like, I'm going to start believing if I hear the same message repeated several times coming from different people. If you talk to me all the time the same story, look, that might be, in my opinion, your own standing, not necessarily the whole organization. What's wrong if we just all speak in the name of the organization? What do we need to do?
Make sure you're all on the same message.
That's
Make
it.
sure you all have the same message.
That takes an enormous amount of discipline, particularly if you're talking about in a commercial environment. How many employees in the company?
Yeah, I have 450, 450.
400, you got 450 people, got to be sure that they're all saying exactly the same thing and they're not letting their own personal perspective come into it. That's a tough thing to do. I'd say impossible. So maybe you don't have 3 people do it, maybe you have 10, maybe you have 15, but not everybody.
You've heard about FAQs?
Yeah.
So what's the problem of setting up the FAQs?
Journalists don't always ask what's on the sheet.
But look, we're going to come up with all the questions.
Isn't that just a waste of time? It's a waste of time. You're wasting your employees' time. You're wasting someone's time who's going to come up with it. You know, you're wasting their time. They're going to memorize it. It doesn't seem efficient.
Maybe in your company, but look in my company. Look at me. Look at me. Like somebody's going to ask you, like for example, you work for me, and somebody's going to ask you, where is Slobo? You know, what's he doing? You're going to say, look, he's at the time, in Syria. Like, what the fuck is he doing in
And when someone comes
Syria?
out and says he's at a strip club, like you don't know what's going to come out of people's mouths. You don't.
But they have stake in it too, so they're going to want to represent both themselves and the company.
It's
Very
stunning
much
how.
can.
But some employees, you think they have a stake in it. They're sitting there thinking, you know something, Slobo, he's getting a nice salary there. I work bloody hard. He's off in teaching at NYU, and I'm working my arse off over here, and I don't get paid enough.
You know, I came off
So,
the elevator
you know,
yesterday.
I wouldn't
all of a
think
sudden, he
to
starts
then
to, like, yeah, it's a
alienate
good
myself
company,
from
but
that
If
company.
you let everybody have the
Wouldn't be the
voice
answer.
though, then people can come out and say, no, well, that's not how it is. This one guy's, and you can kind of tell like who's the rotten apple, who's just not speaking for the
Then it's
company,
dissent.
for himself.
Then it's dissent. Then you go, well, there's something going on in this company where, there's a faction that are saying this is going on. There are other people who are saying that that's going on. Nobody's talking to each other. That can be manipulated by the media so easily.
Yeah, but whether you say, if you say, yeah, you only 3 people going to speak, I think that if you're going to have the people that have that attitude, they're going to speak no matter what. They'll speak to the media no matter what. People do it all the time.
Not necessarily.
Then you get
If
fired.
they feel they have license to speak, then they'll speak. If you say, listen, dude, if you get an inquiry from the media, you're supposed to say, our company would love to talk to you. Here's the guy you need to talk to. Or talk to any one of these 10 guys, and they can deal with you. They'll be more than happy to help you. I can't help you with that.
So in order for Slobo to really have his employees being good spokespersons, I first need to make them feel good, right?
Mhm.
If they're all going to speak, I need to be able to, I need to pay them well, I guess, so that they don't say like, look, Slobo is just bullshitting around and, getting paid, and look at him, and look at me, I'm busting my ass off, right? So I need to fix them first, they feel good. But now, what can I give to my activists? Once I'm in an issue of Serbia, let's say 2000, what do I give, what do these activists get out of me as the organization, or me who's kind of telling them what to do?
Well, exactly what you said, the frequently asked questions or talking points the leadership is coming up with a unified, identifiable message. And then once there's buy-in to the message, and it goes, and the message is also the doctrine kind of nonviolent rebellion. So as you're delegating, I think what's the most challenging part of a horizontal movement is the complete delegation. So you no longer have control over what this faction is doing 5-hour drive from you, but as long as they are committed to the vision and committed to nonviolence, it doesn't really matter where they go from there.
What are the 3 key principles of nonviolent struggle?
Unity, planning, and nonviolence. Discipline.
So, if they keep to those principles, and if I give them the symbol, what harm they can do to me?
Well, that's a choice you have to make. There's also an element of damage control, like you
Okay.
said with the fist and the money. If you went out and said and explained it and intentionally did this kind of damage control campaign, that's not what you chose to do, and it ended up working in your favor. We used to run into this all the time when we would have demonstrations and testimony of and gather homeless people together. We would have maybe like a dozen people prepared with the talking points, and inevitably press would go up to this guy and say, oh, you know, what's your story? And the press would get the story that we didn't want. So we didn't succeed unless we could see the press and kind of go over and say, oh, you know, this is what we're here doing today. So in your company, I think it's important to choose which one and follow through with that. Either you're the spokesperson or everyone is. And if you are, it's because your employees' skills, what you need from them is to do their job. And this is no longer part of their job. It used to be, but it no longer is. Or you say, sorry, new management, we still want this to be part of everyone's job, and push back, and that's a battle that you just need to prioritize.
It's also different when you're talking about a movement like Opto or a company like your company. I mean, Opto's about freedom of expression. So you know, voicing your own opinion is all part of your platform. You should be allowed to do that, but it's not the same in a commercial environment. So I don't think the parallels can be drawn. The way you communicate in a commercial environment versus a broad-based, inclusive movement where people are invited to have lots of different opinions under an umbrella of like, listen, we all have the right to say what we want, but he's got to go.
Cool. So I have an activist. I agree with you. It's a fair point. So, but I have like 50,000 activists. And look, out of those 50,000, like 80% of them are high school kids, you know, like first couple of years of college. And what they get from me, they get arrested. And once they get out of the prison, I give them like these badge, right? I give them these kind of just symbol, you know, the badge with black fist, and that means they have been arrested. You know, they went through some of the issues. And these guys are walking around, everybody see them. And they know that I'm not giving those badges just, you know, behind a corner. You know, people just who really sacrificed, they can get that. That means a lot to them. Guess what? Those who have been arrested more than once, they get like white, you know, badge with a white fist. And there are those with the red one. And there are only 20 of those. So imagine what kind of guy you are with the red one. That means a lot in your school. That means everybody are walking around and looking at you. And look, this guy is almost like a general if you compare it to the army. But my general is a brave activist. You know, he basically earned that based on his activism, being loyal to the organization, but doesn't know what to say. When somebody asks him, so who are you? What are you? And he's like, you know, we are doing some stuff. And if I come up with some sort of FAQs that somebody can ask them, like any time, any place, like journalist, like mother, father, colleague, friend, police, during interrogation, maybe that can be even useful. If he actually understands what needs to be answered to the police questions, then that might be even part of the training for him, right?
And that's how the majority of politicians get through politics. Now they have their 5 talking points, and it doesn't matter what the question is, you go to one of your 5 talking points. That's how Sarah Palin got through the debate. Doesn't matter what they asked her, she went to talking points, and it could have, I mean, she didn't do that well, but it could have been a complete disaster based on, because when she went into her first interview with Katie Couric, she didn't. She decided to answer the questions.
She
and
did
she didn't know how to.
phenomenally in that one. She
Katie
really
Couric,
pulled
yeah.
through.
And she didn't know how to answer the questions. They changed the strategy and they said, you only have to remember 5 things. And just go with one of the 5.
My students at Grinnell, actually, once she showed up in, where was she? Somewhere in Iowa. I couldn't remember. But she basically showed up and she was speaking about, how U.S. should restructure immigrants laws and stuff, and they had all T-shirts like Sarah Palin for immigrants. It was funny. Anyway, but look, so if I really teach this guy with the red badge, what the police is going to ask him first? Who pays you? Second one, what's your aim? What are the other questions? Like, who's your closest?
Who do you answer to? I guess that would be who pays you.
Sorry?
Never mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, who do you answer to, but that would be who pays you. That's the same.
He gives you orders.
Who gives you the orders? What else?
What are some of your jobs that you have to do?
Where do you meet?
How many people in the organization?
And so what do we as an organization that's horizontally structured want to do? We want to give them the answer that works for us, right? So who pays us?
We're volunteers. No one pays us.
Who order? Who issues the orders?
Nobody.
Nobody. It's us.
I think it was on display in the video when the guy was driving around. They opened the trunk, give out the T-shirts, and then just drive away and let them do their own thing. I was like on display like perfectly, like the horizontal going across.
So what else? Like, where do you meet? Everywhere. Cafes, universities, we meet whatever.
We hang out all over the place.
So, and if I just have this list, and if I give this list to all of my activists, and if they need to learn, all the potential answers to all these questions, and if they really start speaking and answering people, police, everybody else's questions, I get the very same message, right? And then once I start originating the same messages going around, then people start believing in what we do, because we kind of do the same, we speak the same way. So now, once in southern Serbia, it happened that a police officer just arrested one of our activists, and he found our FAQ list with the answers. And the guy called his superior and said, like, look, I've got him, and I know everything about him. I've got the secret papers from this guy. I know everything about him. But on the side of the activist, I made this guy even smart, right? I made him even smart. I made him even, politically explicit. He actually learned on how to address different things. Now that's something. Once he comes to the school, he's not just a guy with fast legs, who can run fast, do the things, right? But when his teacher asks him about different things, he can answer. Now, these kind of organizations are actually, the trainings are extremely important. I find that crucial. So you need to set up the training process for all of your activists. If you just don't deal with activists, if you just don't communicate with them, if you don't try to improve their skills, that's one of the important pillars that we kind of neglect, right? The skills. So horizontal organizations, they really need to rely on activists. Now, the issue of the spokespeople. Now, that's exactly what we did. We were producing the leaders. Because in the head of the police, it was like, who speaks? That's the person that we should get. That's the leader. Then what they do, they actually look for the person that speaks. Then once they want to actually get a guy who speaks. What do? They kind of try to find where the wires, from the mic are going all the way to the speakers in the public square. So the police is trying to rip off all those wires. Now, what if it's wireless mic? That's going to be an issue. Then let's find for electricity to kind of, just leave it without power. What's kind of dynamics between the governments and these kind of movements? What do you believe in terms of the quality of the people in different places? Where would you look at? What's like these terrestrial graph? Like, this is called like evolution of bureaucracy, okay? So look, I'm a bureaucrat. I need to pick up and, this is how, this is time. This is how smart I am, okay? So I need to pick up my deputy. Whom am I going to pick up? The guy who's less smart, right? I don't want him to replace me. Look, guys, you go to UN and you speak to the people who work at the UN. What's their ideal dream? To get their boss's job, to get their boss's fee. And then this guy needs to pick up, his deputy. Whom he's going to pick up? Right? Then it goes like this. And you have these trends really, like read some statistics about the bureaucracies and structures. And then each couple of years or time, you have like some unbelievable thing because you can't find anybody down there. So you basically go up and then it goes again. That's how it really works. What happens within the organizations which are movement kind of organized? No fees, only in activism. I spend 8 hours, 12 hours a day over here. And look, once I get you and once we talk, I have the plan, right? And if I have the plan, if I'm spending most of my time over here, if I actually have ability to just impose my authority over you guys, then I'm definitely more quality and more authoritative leader than any of these people, right? So the leadership really matters within these movements. These are the key assets that every movement has. So the leadership is the most important. That's why the horizontal is an issue. Now, speaking of which, if we have that leadership and the intention on the other side is to get rid of it, we said like they're going to try to infiltrate. You saw that we organized the Congress of our movement, and it was basically the parody on the other side's Congress, the Milošević party. But we had a heavy debate. Debate was like, what kind of hole do we pick up? How big were for the Congress? And then we had all sorts of debates. Let's pick up this one because it has a nice big seats. This one has more seats. This one has less seats. And then one guy stood up. I said, look, people, if we pick up the hole with the seats, people are going to be sitting. If people are sitting, people feel comfortable. If people feel comfortable, people would like to say something. If people start speaking, people will ask for voting. If people start to vote, we are fucked. So it was like no seats. What am I saying? The issue is how do you preserve the leadership? Okay, how do you preserve leadership from not being pushed away from the organization? Because that happens a lot. So whatever kind of organization you have, you need to have some sort of teams. And these teams, they're kind of marketing teams, logistics, networking, and so on and so on, right? Somebody needs to be PR, whatsoever. Then let's say you have like some people over here. It can be as many of them as you want, like the inner group. And in our case, it has been like 12 of us. And then each one of us was kind of attached to one of these teams. And so what my job would be, I was building the network around the country. And then my job later on was really to run the action team on different kind of actions and tactics. Then later on, my job was really to run the Get Out the Vote campaign. So my job was really to come up over here for us to discuss, to meet. And then I was supposed to go back to my team. And I needed to make them start believing in what we agreed that we should be doing. Because whatever we agreed to do, for example, like Orthodox New Year Eve celebration, that was a big issue for us. So imagine You basically invite people to celebrate, like they celebrate every year at the main square, downtown Belgrade. You advertise, not openly, but indirectly, that some famous bands are going to come. And everybody are kind of guessing who's going to be playing at that time. For us, Rage Against the Machine, imagine that. Never came to Serbia. Oh, right. We are revolutionaries. Then 50,000 people appears. Then at midnight, when they actually expect some huge band to jump to the stage, you have the screens with people who have been killed in all of the recent wars of Serbia, and you have the voice that you heard behind that was actually counting the names and spelling the names of these people. That guy actually became the president of Serbia. That was our president from up until a couple of months ago. Boris Tadic. So he had a deep voice, so he was really kind of eloquent. So, and you say to the people, go home. There is nothing to celebrate. What did we do? What did we do by actually organizing that kind of act, that activity? Don't you think that we manipulated? We did manipulate, right? We manipulated people. We called them for one purpose, and we gave them something totally different.
Were you confident that wasn't going to make them angry? Go the opposite way?
I was extremely worried that the bottles are going to be, flying towards the stage. That everybody will be pissed.
Right. Yeah.
But guess what? Tomorrow, no one complained. We had no single complaint about what we have done, apart from a couple of drunk guys who came for the party, who did not understand that there is no goddamn party. But no one complained. This is the empirical. This is not something that I could just give you from any other example. I've seen some of the similar things. But I believe the movement gets its own credibility when it reaches the ability to manipulate and people not to reiterate on that, right? Once you can do that and people not getting back and crashing you, I think you have some sort of legitimacy. And people accept that kind of game. Now, speaking of which, so I have my teams. I know how to organize myself. We have the track record of what we do. So we have 3 principles: unity, planning, nonviolent discipline. Add symbol to it. Then what do I need to do in order just to reproduce my organization in different places? I need somebody to teach these people in different parts of the country what we do, how we do. I want them to teach them the FAQs. I want them actually to be trained to become our branches or activists. So that means that I need to have a group of trainers. Key for success of our organization was a group of trainers that were totally independent from all of us. I had no idea who these people are. We had about 16 trainers, which were just going around the country, gathering. As you saw, you're very right. You saw the car and the truck. This guy would just come, offload the T-shirts, the materials, and disappear. I never knew who these people are. Even today, I'm seeing some of our activists. Now they're like grown-up people doing something else. So the guy who comes to me and speak about the business, he's like, remember, I was from Niche. I was part of it. I'm like, look, mate, no offense, but I have no idea. So the whole point is, you just need to let organization live on its own. And yes, there are going to be the problems. Some people are going to do something that you don't like, something that's not in the, for the purpose of your whole issue. But those are minimal. Why? Because you just tell them, you just need to use our symbol, and that's it. And that's how you make the organization work. And guess what? In that kind of loose system, I guarantee you, our police, and once I read some of the secret, service files afterwards, because for the period of time after change, they allowed us to read the files. And I had like 2 codes. I was the enemy of the state, and I was the foreign enemy of the state, because I've been born in Croatia. So they kind of had me on 2. And I have to tell you, these guys really thought that we have the weapons, that we have like military camps. They were for sure that we are going to start the armed revolution at some point. But they had no idea where, and they were desperate about it, that they kind of digged around, and we made even mistakes. We made mistakes. Why? Because by organizing ourselves like this, what would happen, like on the way when somebody was driving the truck with our production, materials, leaflets, posters, to deliver these guys, for them to just do their local village, police would just take it away. And then the next day, these guys would ship them, you know, the new truck. And then the next day, the whole city would be blasted. And the police was like, look, they're organized so good. Whatever we do, you know, they have more and more supplies, more and more people coming in. And so they they have to be organized in a way that somewhere over there beneath there is the military structure. And they're 100% sure. I can tell you from what I've read. Now, this is kind of the animal of the organization. And trust me, it's going to shut down at some point. It will shut down once you lose somebody on the other side who's making you united, right? In our terms, that was our government, Milosevic. There is a factor that makes you, you know, that pushes you towards each other. From perspective of the pillars, he's doing the push effect onto you all the time. And our movement, basically, we, over here, we never did anything without consensus. It was always consensus. We never agreed to do anything. Like that Serbian New Year Eve, Srđa was extremely against it. And one other guy who was dealing with finances, he was as well extremely against it. They're trying to say like, but why don't we get at some point, you know, the band that actually is going to play one or two songs at least? And I'm like, no bands. At least one. So they're extremely against it. It took, you know, me and Ivan actually 2 weeks to persuade him, like, look, guys, we need to do something like that. It was enormous effort. But we would never do anything without having full consensus. It was enormous energy in place, you know. Like that's out of question. Like you spend a lot of time conveying people to do something, but that's how it needed to be. That was the way that it worked. And then we voted for the first time afterwards. After the election, we voted for the first time. For the first time, we had, you know, majority, minority, and then that was the end of the organization. So these organizations are momentum-driven in a way, okay? So if you just wanted to put it again, like numbers, time-wise, it's going to be like this, okay? So what you want to do, you want to plan your peak once. You want to plan that you have a peak when you needed the most of the people. So, question for you guys. What do you want to do here? What is this time for? The perfect time. For what?
On the street.
For rallies and marches. Right? You want your rallies and marches here. Remember the numbers. This is where you're going to have the most of the number. This is where your pillars of the force are most probably going to crash once they see the numbers. When do you want to start negotiating? Why?
Give the opponent the opportunity to see that you are willing to sit and negotiate, and no matter what the outcome, you still have huge numbers that will come out either in support of the negotiated result or against the failure.
You have the time where your bat night is going to be constantly improving, right? From over here, your bat night's actually going worse. Okay, so the issue then is that, keep in mind, this is going to happen once, and for that momentum, this is the perfect time for the rallies, for public events, show the numbers. Negotiations, you don't want to wait for this moment. Even here, it's too late. Cool. Any questions? Now, there are practical issues like who deals with the money. In our case, the guy who dealt with the money was the guy whose family was probably one of the richest in the whole country. And we all knew that the money we have, it's pocket money for him, so that he would not steal any of that. Otherwise, how do we deal with reporting in that kind of organization? There are no reports. So my only idea of where it's going to be safe, if I give it to him, and I know that he knows with the money. If they would give it to me, who knows? I might be tempted. And so those are the practical things that basically each of the organizers need to have in mind before that happens. But just the principles that I spoke about are very important. The nonviolent discipline, you're not going to get it in any way apart from actually just training your people. Training your people. That's an issue. They need to be trained how to just resist, kicking the police officers or just, causing some sort of troubles in the streets. Because there is huge temptation, right? When you get beaten, it's very difficult not to resist.
So who trains the trainers?
In our case, we did. Sergej did.
Okay.
Sergej did the most.
So it's one or two people who've got...
Yeah. Out of this group, one or two. And I really didn't know. I knew some, but not all. I had no clue who these people are. So these people's job was actually to go around the country, just meet different parts of our, supporters, and just deal with them and make them actually becoming our branches. How did we recruit people? Different kind of events. Like we staged on campus, concert, and over there you would have our activists just having the forms, getting your phones or emails. I've been recruited 4 times at one occasion. Okay, so that's about. Any questions regarding this? This is short tips for the revolution. Peace. Dilemma actions. Dilemma actions are something that we are striving for, okay? So what you want to do with dilemma actions, what is dilemma action? That's right.
Win-win scenario for you.
So whatever you put opponent in that kind of situation, that whatever they do, they lose. The best example that I'm using about it is I went to my banker, and she's a great lady, and she's about 50-some years old. And once I came for the meeting, she had very beautiful, but kind of I guess it was too small skirt, too short. So now we are discussing, and I'm like, oh, you look so good today. Giving it a compliment. And she was like, Slava, you're saying it just like that. And I'm like, yes, no. Whatever I would say, it was lose-lose. So it was like, sorry, where do I need to sign? And I'm going. So that's
waiting for some banker
so that's basically what you. Well, sorry for my Serbian, expression on how to do that, but that's I don't know if this is. Anyway, but that's the idea that you want to do. That's basically it. You want to put your opponent in a situation where your opponent, whatever they do, they're gonna lose. And that's basically designing dilemma actions. It's something that's gonna need you some sort of creativity, but there is the way to do it. And so at the end of this presentation, I'm just gonna leave you guys designing dilemma action. That's gonna be your own dilemma action. You're gonna pick up the choice of your, and I'm gonna be just listening to you tomorrow at some point, once we meet, just explaining what did you come up with. But here it is. So the greatest dilemma action, for example, that you can remember of is, Mahatma Gandhi's Salt March, right? And what was the dilemma over there? Anybody?
Salt was taxed for the British.
They make salt stuff.
So then they all went to the ocean and they got it and made their own salt and it was illegal, but it was
But the whole point is that basically it was illegal to produce your own salt, right? Because you were supposed to buy it from Brits. Brits were making the money on it, British companies. And so he announced, he said, I'm going to the seaside and I will make my own salt, as all of our, fathers and grandfathers, did. So dilemma action component of it was actually from the time when he announced up until the time he was marching to the seaside. Because he has been marching for 30 days. And he has been going on the way. He was not going straight way. He was going all the way around, just seeing all different people, meeting people in different villages and places. And then on the side of the Brits, there was the question like, look, do we let him just grow the numbers? Because it was on him, it was himself only when he started. And then in the end, like hundreds of thousands of people were marching with him. Or we just stop him. And if we want to stop him, like, what did the guy do? Nothing. He's just going around. He did not commit any of the crime yet. So that's one of the brilliant dilemma actions, which basically led the whole Indian movement into the discussions with colonial power over the concessions. Now we're going to be talking tomorrow about Gandhi once I play you the movie. You'll find an interesting thing. Do you know by the chance when was he arrested first time? No, in India. I'm asking India. Yes. Anyway, easier question.
He wants to negotiate with the viceroy.
That's right.
Not negotiate. He said, fine, we're going to carry on making salt. Then arrested him.
That's right. And what was the time that actually, what was the period of time between he first time spoke to him and was arrested, and the time that actually they liberated themselves from the Brits? Any idea? 18 years. How long did it take to South African, movement to actually liberate themselves after the Port Elizabeth boycott?
85 to 94.
Much less. So the negotiation skills. How good negotiator was actually Mahatma Gandhi? Not good at all. In many of the occasions, not the big negotiator. I don't know if you knew about that, but Gandhi was not the best negotiator you've seen in those kind of things. That's why I'm saying, like, just as any different strategies, the leadership within the movements, I think it's very tricky once you have one supreme leader that no one can actually question, because you're putting yourself into the situation where this guy is going to be needing enormously, lots of skills in order to fix all of the issues, like being good strategist, being good negotiator, horizontal, vertical. That's a very, very tough situation. I haven't seen, many people that actually have all these skills in one. So that's one of the dilemma actions. Burma. What do you know about Burma? Myanmar. Burmese. So the interesting thing is that what these guys decided, they actually decided to co-opt some of the national symbols. And this is very important. Resistance movement of ours has been born basically on us studying what had happened throughout the Second World War. The issue was that the Serbian opposition has been very, very bad. I mean, we have been failures for about 10 years. And at some point, it was really, we were all desperate, like no energy at all. Like people were like, what's, it's not worth of really trying anymore. We tried everything. We marched for 130 days. We did this and that. We had united oppositions. We had elections. And then the point was like, okay, but look, some time ago, like 50 years ago, there had been like Nazi occupation of Serbia. And there had been like group of the young communists at the time, yes. But communists who were actually doing all sorts of actions during the occupation. And guess what? If they would be caught in the streets, they would be shot to death immediately. And these guys kept doing it. So what made them doing it? And why aren't we able to recruit more people to work with us? That was the issue at the time. And the good reasoning, I believe, behind is that each country has its own unique issues, right? Each place it's kind of different a bit. Now, in all of our trainings, once we sit with the people who are in, some sort of oppressed societies, they're saying like, that worked in Serbia, but our case is different. And then I heard that so many times. And I'm, okay, yes, let's go. However, before I graduated in the US, I would say yes, but then my professor taught me slow. However. So in a sense, I believe it's important to go and study with the pillars that we spoke about. It's very important to go and study what is there actually. What made this country look like this? What are the national attributes that we could use? So here I am. I'm in Cuba. I'm walking downtown Havana with my friend Osvaldo. Osvaldo Paya is the leader of the group called Varelistas. Did you ever heard about the Varela project, right? So you know about it. Why don't you tell us what it was?
Not enough to tell you about it. I mean, I've heard of it.
So Varela project was a project that for the first time the Cubans signed the petition. That was by the Cuban Constitution. If anybody would raise about 10,000 or more signatures for any kind of things, the parliament was obliged to put that in the official, proceedings. So for the, MPs to debate it and vote for it or not. But for the first time, somebody managed to get 10,000 signatures. And the 10,000 signatures were actually for the free elections. They wanted actually to get free elections. And Osvaldo Paya organized it and had about 50 to 60 people who worked with him on collecting these signatures. Then what happened was the regime arrested like 55 of them out of 60. And when Osvaldo was supposed to be arrested, he actually received some high European reward for the human rights. And that kind of saved him in a way because he gained publicity, international publicity, and it was very difficult for Castro to just get him. So they left him on his own. So he was just going like in prison all around Havana in Cuba, and whomever he would meet, they would just get and put in prison. So we were kind of meeting downtown, and the only way we could discuss was either to go to his house, and I knew immediately once we go there, who knows who's watching, or just to meet downtown and walk. We just picked up the busiest street, and we just walked up and down and discuss for as long as it would take us to get from one street to another one, and then we would meet who knows when again. So I asked him, look, man, what are you really trying to do? What's your aim? What's your, what do you want to send as a message across? And he said, I want to explain to people that Che Guevara was a bloody murderer. So, did you guys ever go to Cuba? Not allowed to? Well, I've been with some Americans. I've been there with some Americans. Anyway, so, sorry? Like once you... Okay, so what about Castro's speeches? Did you ever read or hear any of his speeches? Those are famous, like 6 or 8 hours. Cuban heat, hey man, and you need to stand over there and listen to him talking. But there are a couple of great books of his speeches, and I read 2. And it's one interesting thing. He never said in any of his speeches, I want you, I think you should, the Cuban should do this, the Cubans should do that. He always speaks, if Che would be alive, Che would like us to do this. If Che would be alive, Che. As our commander Che used to say, how do you question what Che would like to see and do? Can you? No, that man, cannot be questioned.
Well, Republicans do that with actually a lot of Martin Luther King, even the Republicans.
But anyway, once you're in Cuba, you see that once you go to school, like public school, there is huge picture of Che. So once the kids go in, they salute the comandante, and they walk in. And that's how they go into school every day. So I'm like, Osvaldo, I mean, you really want to teach everybody that Che was a bloody murderer? He said, yes, I mean, in Cuba it's going to be difficult because, he's been used in Cuba as very, very, heavily as a symbol. But outside, why not? I'm like, do you have any idea how many kids in the US are wearing T-shirts with Che? And he was like, no way. I'm like, yes. And not even in America, in Europe as well, in Africa as well. Like all around the world, everybody are seeing Che as a great symbol. And he's like, no way. So the guy basically, they had no access to the outside world. They had no access to media. So they had no clue. And I said, like, good luck. Good luck with doing that. I mean, if you really believe that you can manage it, good luck. Now, then I asked him, like, Osvaldo, what's the name of your organization? He's like, Association of Christian Organizations of Cubans for the four rows of the name. Then I asked him, like, what's your symbol? And he gives me the symbol, which is kind of difficult to reproduce for any academic painter, really. It's so goddamn complicated, but it's there. And so what you have an organization that kind of collected about 10,000 signatures with enormous capacity, right? In Cuba, that's huge. And I'm like, okay, cool, Varelista. So, I mean, is there any sign or symbols that you guys, salute to each other? He's like, yeah, like this, sometimes. And then after I went and I met him again, a year afterwards, I've noticed one strange thing. There are people downtown Havana who are just walking around with T-shirts with Che. You would see Che Guevara on the T-shirts. And guess what? The Che was having, his hand like this. And I asked, like, what is this? And they're like, come on, let's tell you, That means that if Che would be alive, Che would be one of us, one of the Varelistas. We made a Photoshop picture of him, like putting his hand like this. So imagine, these people walked around Havana. They were communicating freely. They were identifying, one to each other. Totally okay. No one was touching them. Why? Because for the police, it was forbidden. Not even forbidden. That would be really against their own ideology to touch anybody who's just promoting Che. And why wouldn't Che at some point would Che be Varelista? For sure he would be alive. At this time in Cuba, he would be one of those who are fighting against the one who promised them free election. If you speak to Cubans, they're not going to tell you, like, look, we would like United Fruit to come back. We would like to get back into the American way of capitalism. None of them really talks like that. Not a single Cuban I spoke with was really interested in that. But they were telling me, look, but what revolution promised us were free elections. We don't have that. And so the major issue for them was really on how do we, deal with that kind of problem. And I think that's a great example of dilemma action. Like you co-opt the symbol. Remember, the political jiu-jitsu, you really co-opt the symbol of your opponent and you use it. And, let them deal with it then. So a couple of these examples you can find over here. Like as well, civil rights movements. Like you have the blacks, part of the Reverend Lawson trainings was like, okay, let's go into the cafes and diners where we're not allowed to go and let's just sit behind the bars and let's just sit. Let's not order anything. Let them just kick us out. And it has been really good dilemma action because what do? Now, this one was that we kind of did in Serbia. So we came up with a keg, like a beer keg. And what it says over here is like, put a dime in and stick him. And smash him. Put a dime and smash. And on the other side here, there was Milosevic's picture. So we would just leave the keg downtown, and people would be putting the coins in, and they would just use the bat and just bang. And then at some point, police would come and arrest the keg. And, the next time, once we produced any posters, we used to say, like, all the fund, this production has been funded through the action, put a dime, and beat him. Like we collected so much money that we even, could actually finance the poster production. And that was really cool. Why? Because you would just walk down the street and you would see some noise, and people would be just smashing, those kegs. And no activist would be, in any danger because we would just go put it somewhere in the street and just leave and sit, have a coffee nearby and watch police arresting the keg. As well, this always works when we speak about dilemma actions. Like these are famous Serbian actors. And whenever we had an issue, of we didn't know what to do, we used to have some celebrities, with one simple message. Fist is a salute. Like this is the way we salute. And that has been all around. Whenever we had some black periods of without inspiration, we don't know what to do. And organization needs to live. Organization is kind of shark. Probably Sergio told you that. If shark stops, it dies, right? Organization needs to work all the time. You can't shut it down for 2 weeks and then just open it up again. It needs to have its own agenda. So any kind of celebrity saluting as we did would not harm these people and would put the regime in a very difficult position. Why? Because these people are beloved because they're great actors, not because they're ideologically on that way, on the other way. And then it would be very difficult for the regime to attack them for that. So this is what you're going to be using, okay? So I want you to design your own dilemma action. Just pick up any issue and think about it. Get me something that's going to be provocative, that's going to put, and address the issue or the opponent in a lose-lose situation.
So just list the 3 things, what the policy is, what the dilemma action is, and then...
You were saying?
And then your widely held beliefs.
Yeah. Well, whatever. Usually what you do, you just get on some government's policies, right? You just study those. You see where actually you can, what the action could be about it. And just, dilemma actions, what do you confront your opponents with? With widely held beliefs, right? No one should be forbidden from walking all the way down to the ocean. Salt is a different issue. No one should be arrested downtown Havana for actually having Che on its t-shirt. Just focus on those.
Are we choosing an actual policy in the government?
Yeah.
Any government.
Any. Zuma, for example. You see? Plenty of. Plenty of. Plenty of. After I have a sex, I wash myself, therefore why should I be protecting myself from HIV?
And then I eat it. Where did that come from? Yeah. He's so crazy.
You never heard that?
I've read it.
Oh, come on, guys. That's one of the greatest that I loved from Mr. Zuma.
That is slightly more sensible than his predecessor's stance on HIV/AIDS, where he said there's no link between HIV.
I know. I work in HIV and AIDS field. It is psycho.
How can a virus cause a syndrome? So that's the problem.
It's a very difficult one, yes. Yeah. So usually, again, just to make clear, so you get some government present policies, you go and just put that against wildly, held beliefs, and then you structure your action in between. That's basically how you confront it. I would be worried to work around one. You know, I think it's in U.S. Constitution. It's written that you have a right to defend yourselves from your government if they do the. Then you had the gun prevention and stuff and so on. My Colorado students always focused on that one because in the free time they've been just shooting and hiking and these kind of things. But I guess it's not the best thing to focus on.
I'm going to present this until it's part of the bigger project.
We are going to be talking, you're going to be telling me what your dilemma actions are. I'm going to be telling you whether they're better or worse, good or bad, okay? And then based on dilemma actions you're going to be doing the whole plan format or the campaign. So pick up the one that you think you can develop later on into something much bigger. Did Sergej talk to you about fear? Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's basically that we can cover tomorrow. I don't know, if you have anything else that you got our books. I mean, look, I mean, this book that we gave you, it's like kind of, you know, revolution for dummies. So it's easy, you just go easily through it. Sorry?
Do you have it in other languages?
Oh yes, it's like in 8 or 10 different languages.
Including Macedonian and Arabic?
Arabic, for sure. Macedonian, I'm not sure. But Macedonians can read easily Serbian.
Yeah.
I think it's Spanish, it's definitely in Russian, in Spanish, in German, in Arabic, in Farsi, in Hebrew.
All the countries that matter.
Sorry?
All the countries that matter.
I mean, people have been translating it, and basically we kind of we ran the process for the couple of those that we were particularly interested in, and then this book can be downloaded for free from the website. So basically everything that we write, it's free on the web. And I'm going to give you tomorrow references as well for the readings and stuff that you are particularly interested. If you have any of these questions or ideas, just let me know, and I can basically, I mean, for sure we are going to, you know, you have our emails, we are on the list, so whatever you have at any time, you guys are free to contact us or talk to. By the